Hey everyone, welcome back to the Incredible India podcast series.
I am so excited for this one, actually.
Really? I'm your host, Taylor, and I'm joined by our resident expert, Sam, for another deep dive into a really fascinating story from the archives.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sam. And while today's deep dive is going to take us on a journey that, frankly, feels a bit like science fiction, even though it is entirely grounded in history.
Yeah, I want you, the listener, to just imagine stepping onto a train platform. You know, you're surrounded by the usual hustle of modern travel. People are staring at smartphones, digital arrival boards are flashing, commuters are just rushing by with noise-canceling headphones.
Right, the standard chaotic commute.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the train that pulls up to take you to your destination isn't a modern, sleek bullet train. And, you know, it's not a replica or some theme park ride either. We're talking about an actual functioning time machine.
It's a literal time machine.
Our mission today is to explore the Fairy Queen. This is a 171-year-old steam locomotive built all the way back in 1855 that is still out there today, hauling passengers through the beautiful landscape of Rajasthan.
And when we say it was built in 1855, we need to be really clear about the physical reality of this machine, because it wasn't just, restored to look like it's from 1855.
I mean, it's not like a prop.
No, not at all. It's not a hollowed-out Victorian shell with some modern computerized diesel engine hidden inside. The boiler, the cylinders, massive driving wheels, the coal tender, all of it is original.
Wow.
Yeah, this is authentic Victorian-era engineering that is still breathing fire and generating steam today.
Which is just wild to think about. But before we talk about what it actually feels like to ride this metal monster, we have to understand how it even survived. Because, I mean, a machine made of iron and steel in 1855, it should have been melted down for scrap a dozen times over by now.
Oh, absolutely. The origin story is just this epic logistical saga. So the Fairy Queen, which was officially designated as East Indian Railway's ER-22, was built in Leeds, England by a firm called Kitson, Thompson and Hewitson.
Okay, so Leeds, England, how does it get to India?
Well, at that time, the British Empire was aggressively expanding its railway networks across the Indian subcontinent, to move resources and troops. But you couldn't just snap your fingers and have a 26-ton locomotive appear in Calcutta.
Right, there's no overnight air freight for heavy industry in the 1850s.
Far from it. They took this massive locomotive, dismantled it completely, packed the heavy iron components into these huge wooden crates, and then loaded it onto a sailing ship.
A sailing ship? For a steam engine?
Yes. And this ship then had to travel all the way around the Cape of Good Hope at the southern tip of Africa.
Oh, man.
We are talking about a voyage of several months, navigating some of the most treacherous, storm-heavy waters on Earth just to reach the port of Calcutta. And once the crates arrived, the puzzle had to be put back together at the railway workshops in Howrah.
Okay, I have to pause on that visual because we all know that feeling of, like, ordering a bookshelf, right? It arrives flat pack and you're sitting on your living room floor with a tiny Allen wrench, completely overwhelmed by step 3 of the instructions.
Oh, yeah, the worst feeling.
Right. Now imagine that, but it's 1855. It is 26 tons of heavy machinery. You have absolutely no standardized manual. And if you mess up the assembly, a high-pressure steam boiler literally explodes.
Exactly.
It is essentially the most stressful piece of IKEA furniture ever shipped in human history.
That is a perfect way to put it. And they had to reassemble it using the really rudimentary tools of the era. So once it was finally on the tracks, the Fairy Queen was given the relatively light duty of hauling mail trains in West Bengal.
Okay, so it starts out doing mail.
Right, but history intervened. In 1857, so just 2 years after it arrived, the Indian Rebellion broke out. This was a massive, highly consequential uprising against the rule of the British East India Company.
Oh, wow. So it's right in the middle of a major conflict.
Completely. Suddenly, these railways, which were initially built for commerce and mail, they became the most critical military logistics system on the subcontinent. The Fairy Queen was immediately drafted, essentially hauling heavy troop trains toward the conflict.
That's crazy. It was thrust directly into the center of a pivotal turning point in the region's history.
It was. It literally carried the weight of history on its back.
And presumably it couldn't do that forever, right? I mean, what happens to a machine when the war ends and newer, much bigger trains are invented?
Well, it was assigned to line construction duties in Bihar for a while, and it managed to stay active until 1909. But eventually, technology outpaced it. It was retired. And for 34 years, it just sat outside Howrah Station as a static display.
Just a heavy piece of decoration.
Basically. Then in 1943, it was moved to a railway training school in Chandausi, Uttar Pradesh. where it just sat completely dormant. For nearly 90 years, it was asleep, exposed to the elements, baking in the sun, rusting in the monsoon rains.
90 years outside.
Yeah, it wasn't until 1996 that a decision was made to bring it back to life for commercial heritage tours. It was sent down to LocoWorks Parambar in Chennai for a massive overhaul.
See, I'm going to challenge the word overhaul here.
Oh.
Because calling what they did in 1996 a repair or an overhaul feels like a gross understatement, to be honest. When iron and steel sit outside for 9 decades, the metal warps, the seals disintegrate, the rust penetrates deep into the mechanics. You can't just give it an oil change.
Right, you're touching on the exact engineering nightmare the team in Chennai actually faced. You can't just weld modern steel onto 1855 wrought iron.
Because they react differently.
Exactly. The metals react differently to heat and stress. The engineers didn't have computer-aided design files or original blueprints. They had to essentially reverse engineer the entire locomotive.
Yeah, it sounds impossible.
It was incredibly difficult. They had to rediscover the lost arts of Victorian metallurgy, figuring out how to cast new fittings using 19th century sand molding techniques so that the new components wouldn't compromise the original boiler. It was basically archaeological engineering.
Which makes the fact that they got it running again feel like an actual miracle.
Yeah.
And, they did it so well that in 1998, it was certified by the Guinness Book of World Records as the oldest steam locomotive in regular service anywhere on Earth.
Yeah, but the survival story doesn't even end there.
Wait, really? What else happened?
In 2011, while it was parked at a railway shed in Delhi, the locomotive was vandalized. Thieves broke in and stole rare original brass fittings and copper components.
Oh, you have got to be kidding me.
It was devastating. It easily could have been the final nail in the coffin for the Fairy Queen.
I mean, how do you even recover from that? You can't just log online and order a replacement 1855 brass valve.
No, you have to make it from scratch. The railway works in Chennai had to study archival photographs and the remaining mechanics to custom manufacture exact bespoke replacements for the stolen parts. They had to machine everything by hand to the exact Victorian tolerances.
That is dedication.
Absolute dedication. The commitment to keeping this specific machine alive was just unparalleled.
It really is the train that refuses to die.
Yeah.
So, taking all that historical weight into account, what does it actually feel like for you, the passenger, to board this thing at the Delhi Cantonment Station today?
Okay, so the first thing you notice is just the sheer physicality of the machine. The Fairy Queen is a broad gauge locomotive, and for context, gauge refers to the distance between the two rails on the track.
Right.
Standard gauge in much of the world is about 1,435 millimeters, but India primarily uses broad gauge, which is significantly wider, at 1,676 millimeters.
Okay, so why build the tracks wider? What's the advantage there?
A wider track provides much greater stability. This was absolutely crucial in India, which is a vast subcontinent where they needed to run massive, heavy trains carrying huge amounts of freight and passengers over incredibly long distances.
Ah, so wider base means more stability.
Exactly. The wider base allowed for larger train cars and safer weight distribution. So, despite the Fairy Queen being relatively small, it weighs just 26 tons and produces about 130 horsepower. It sits on this very wide, stable base.
Yeah.
Today, it runs a 143-kilometer route from Delhi down to Alwar in Rajasthan. It passes through places like Gurgaon and Rewari. And Rewari is significant because it's home to the 1893 Railway Heritage Museum.
Right, the museum.
Yeah, it is the only surviving steam locomotive shed in India, and it's where the Fairy Queen lives and is maintained when it's not running its seasonal routes between October and March.
Okay, I want to focus on that engine power for a second, because 130 horsepower, I mean, there are modern riding lawnmowers and jet skis with more kick than that.
That's true.
And the absolute maximum speed of this train is strictly capped at 40 kilometers per hour. We live in a world that is obsessed with high-speed rail. We want the bullet train that goes 300 kilometers an hour. We want to be at our destination before we even leave. Doesn't 40 kilometers an hour feel agonizingly slow to a modern traveler?
Well, if your only goal is to get from point A to point B to attend a meeting, sure, you take a flight. But the Fairy Queen isn't about transit. It's about the medium of travel itself.
Exactly. And here is how I frame it. Riding a high-speed bullet train is like listening to streaming music on shuffle.
Oh, I like that comparison.
Right. It's perfectly efficient. It gets the job done instantly. The algorithm takes you exactly where you want to go. But riding the Fairy Queen, that is like taking a vintage vinyl record out of its sleeve, carefully placing it on the turntable and dropping the needle.
Yes.
It's not about efficiency. It is entirely about the texture, the ritual, and the forced mindfulness of the mechanical experience.
That is so true. And taking that vinyl analogy a step further, the Fairy Queen has a very distinct, unskippable rhythm. The sensory immersion starts before you even board.
Really? Like how?
Well, the dense smell of burning coal hangs heavy in the morning air. And once you're actually moving, you hear the sharp, aggressive hiss of the steam pressure valves releasing. You physically feel the metallic percussion of the massive driving gear violently working against the steel rails.
You can feel it in the carriage.
Oh, yeah. It's a rhythmic vibration that travels directly through the floorboards into your seat. You are constantly physically aware of the fire and water working together to push you forward.
Let's talk about that water for a second.
Yep.
Because the mechanics of how this thing actually moves are just fascinating to me.
They really are. The locomotive has a tender tank that holds 3,000 liters of water. In a steam engine, a coal fire boils that water, turning it into highly pressurized steam.
Right, the steam creates the pressure.
Exactly. That expanding steam is routed into cylinders where it physically pushes the massive metal pistons, which turn the wheels. You are essentially boiling a small swimming pool to move 26 tons of steel.
That's incredible.
And because it goes through that water so quickly, the train is forced to make frequent stops at water towers along the route to replenish the tank.
Now, on a modern commuter train, a stop to refuel like that would cause an absolute riot. People would be checking their watches, sighing loudly, tweeting angry complaints at the transit authority.
Oh, for sure. But here, those water stops are celebrated events. You get to step off the train, smell the wet ash, watch the engineers climbing over this 19th century beast to fill its tanks, and realize you are participating in a rhythm of travel that hasn't existed in the mainstream for over a century.
You're forced to decelerate. And because you're only going 40 kilometers an hour, you actually look out the window.
Right, you taking the scenery?
You watch the landscape transition from the flat agricultural plains of Haryana, passing wheat and sugarcane fields, until slowly the dry scrub and rocky outcrops of the Aravalli Hills start to rise up on the horizon as you enter Rajasthan. The geography doesn't just blur past, it unfolds.
It's beautiful.
Which brings us to the destination. The Fairy Queen is a machine that refused to yield to time, which makes Alwar the perfect destination, because it is a city that refused to yield to empires.
That is a great connection. Alwar is fiercely independent, yet it is massively overlooked today. International tourists often land in Delhi and just drive right past Alwar on their way to the more famous spots like Jaipur or Udaipur.
Which is a shame.
A huge shame, because Alwar possesses an architectural ambition and a historical weight that rivals anywhere else in Rajasthan.
Let's start with the fort, because you don't call a city fiercely independent without the architecture to back it up.
Right, so the Bala Kila, or Alwar Fort, sits 304 meters above the city on a steep, rocky ridge of the Aravalli Hills. The ramparts alone stretch for 5 kilometers.
5 kilometers, that's massive.
It is, and to understand its significance, you really have to understand the Mughal Empire. The Mughals controlled almost the entirety of the Indian subcontinent for centuries. They possessed unimaginable wealth, massive armies, and advanced siege technology. They conquered almost everything in their path.
They were unstoppable.
Almost unstoppable. Yet Bala Kila is one of the very few pre-Mughal forts in all of Rajasthan that the mighty Mughal Empire was never able to conquer. It stands high above the city as a monument to absolute defiance.
Okay, so you step off a defiant train into a defiant city. That's amazing. What else is hidden in Alwar?
Well, there is the Musi Maharani Chhatri, built in 1815. It's this breathtaking funerary monument built for King Bakhtawar Singh and his queen Musi.
What does it look like?
The visual contrast is just stunning. The entire ground floor is built from deep, heavy red sandstone, while the upper story is crafted from pristine white marble with incredibly intricate carved domed arches.
Wow, that sounds beautiful.
It really is. Then you have Silisar Lake, created in 1845. The Maharaja of the time actually engineered an entire lake and built a stunning palace right on the water's edge simply because he fell in love with a woman from the local village and wanted a royal residence nearby to be close to her.
Okay, that is next-level romantic dedication. Like, I enjoy your company. Please accept this custom-built lake and palace.
Right. Pretty grand gesture.
But speaking of the Maharajas of Alwar, we have to talk about the City Palace Museum.
Huh?
Because it houses royal weapons, ancient manuscripts, and a very specific, notoriously petty collection of cars.
Oh, yes. The museum's crown jewel is a collection of Rolls-Royces with just a phenomenal backstory. The story goes that the Maharaja of Alwar was visiting London. He walked into a high-end Rolls-Royce showroom dressed in casual clothes.
Big mistake by the staff, I assume.
Exactly. The sales representatives, not recognizing royalty without the traditional regalia, treated him dismissively. They insulted him.
A catastrophic mistake for a commissioned salesperson.
Truly. The Maharaja was furious. So he purchased several of their most expensive state-of-the-art vehicles, had them shipped all the way back to Alwar, and issued strict orders to the local municipality.
Wait for it.
These ultra-luxurious British masterpieces were to be used for one specific purpose: collecting the city's daily garbage.
That is actually hilarious. It is genuinely the 19th century equivalent of the most expensive, pettiest one-star Yelp review in human history.
Absolutely.
Just, the customer service was terrible, so I'm using your life's work to haul trash.
Yeah.
The sheer spite is incredible.
Real ultimate flex.
But moving beyond the royal drama of the city, the Fairy Queen journey has another critical layer. Because we transition from the tamed heritage of the city to the raw, untamed wilderness just outside of it. The destination is deeply tied to the Sariska Tiger Reserve.
Yes, Sariska is located just 37 kilometers from Alwar. It's a massive protected area covering 866 square kilometers of the Aire Valley Hills. The landscape is this rugged, beautiful mix of dry, deciduous forest, rocky scrubland, and seasonal streams. But Sariska is famous today for a devastating ecological tragedy and an unprecedented scientific recovery.
Yeah, I'm looking at the timeline and the sources, and the tragedy part just doesn't make sense to me. It's a massive, officially protected reserve. Yet in 2005, the data says the tiger population hit absolute zero. How does an apex predator just vanish from a protected zone?
It was known as the Silent Forest Syndrome. Despite being protected on paper, highly organized, illegal poaching rings infiltrated the reserve. They systematically hunted every single tiger to sell their parts on the black market.
That is so infuriating.
It really is. Because the forest is vast and rugged, the poachers operated under the radar until a 2005 survey revealed the unthinkable. The entire apex predator population had been wiped out. It was a complete ecological collapse at the top of the food chain, and a massive wake-up call for wildlife conservation across India.
To have a thriving ecosystem zeroed out by human greed is just heartbreaking. But the government didn't just abandon the land, did they?
No, they didn't. In 2008, they launched what became the world's largest tiger relocation program. The wildlife authorities began moving wild tigers from the Ranthambore Reserve into Sariska.
But wait, the logistics of this are staggering. You can't just put a tiger in a crate.
Oh, definitely not. You have to track a 400-pound apex predator in the wild, safely dart and sedate it, monitor its vital signs continuously, airlift it via helicopter, and then release it into a completely foreign forest.
I can't even imagine the stress of doing that.
And tigers are highly territorial. The massive fear was that a relocated tiger would reject the new territory, refuse to hunt, or try to wander hundreds of miles back to Ranthambore.
Right. The stress on the animal and the scientist must have been off the charts. Did they adapt?
It was highly experimental, but through incredible dedication, 247 monitoring, stringent anti-poaching patrols, and deep community involvement to protect the prey base, it worked. The tigers established territories. They bred. By 2025, that population of 0 has recovered to 50 thriving tigers. It is celebrated globally as one of the most remarkable wildlife conservation comebacks in modern history.
Look at the incredible poetic parallel we have here. On one track, you have the Fairy Queen, the iron tiger of the railways. It sits dead, rusting, and forgotten for 90 years. It is functionally extinct from the working world.
Right.
Then, human intervention painfully and meticulously brings it back from the dead. At almost the exact same time, just 37 kilometers down the road, the actual biological tigers of Sariska face complete annihilation. They are literally wiped off the map.
It's so true.
And again, through massive, dedicated human intervention, they are miraculously resurrected. You have these two completely distinct stories of survival, one forged in iron, one born in biology, meeting right here at the end of the line.
It highlights a profound duality in human nature. We have the capacity to neglect our creations until they fall apart, and the capacity to exploit nature until it is gone.
Unfortunately, yeah.
But we also possess this relentless capacity for restoration. The mechanical engineers in Chennai and the wildlife biologists in Rajasthan were essentially performing the same act of defiance. They refused to let history, or nature, simply fade into nothing.
Which brings us to the deeper takeaway for you, listening right now. We live in an era defined by planned obsolescence. We buy a flagship smartphone, and we implicitly accept that the battery will degrade, the software will become unsupported, and it'll be tossed in a junk drawer in 36 months.
We really do treat the things we build as disposable.
We do. But the story of the Fairy Queen and the Sariska Tiger Reserve fundamentally challenges that mindset. It proves that with enough care, intention, and absolute dedication, almost anything can be brought back from the brink.
And that raises a fascinating question for all of us today. When we look at the disposable technology surrounding us, we have to wonder, 170 years from now, in the 2190s, what everyday object from our current lives will someone dedicate their entire career to resurrecting? Will there be engineers painstakingly reverse engineering a 2024 laptop just so a passenger of the future can feel the texture of how we used to live?
If you decide to travel to India, we have a recommendation. 5 Senses Tours organizes tours across India, which are immersive cultural experiences. You can email contact@5sensestours.com. Note 5 is written as a numeral in contact@5sensestours.com, or WhatsApp to +919 8456 77446.